I'm watching my husband run straight into a wall of flames, and all I can think about is how he didn't even look back at our son. The circus tent is collapsing around us. People are screaming, and somewhere in that inferno is my 7-year-old Tommy. But David, my husband, Tommy's stepfather, he's charging toward the section where his ex-girlfriend's daughter was sitting, not where our boy was. Not where Tommy was calling for his daddy, with tears streaming down his face just moments before the fire started. I can't breathe. The smoke is choking me. But it's not just the smoke. It's 8 years of being second choice, of watching my son be second choice, all culminating in this moment where even in a life or death situation, we're still not his priority. Tommy! I'm screaming his name as I push through the panicking crowd. Tommy, where are you? But my voice is lost in the chaos. Families are running in every direction, parents clutching their children, and I'm alone. Again. Always alone when it matters most. Let me tell you how we got here, because this story isn't really about a fire. It's about a woman who's been burning alive in her own marriage for years, and no one bothered to notice. My name is Eleanor, and I've been invisible for so long, I sometimes wonder if I'm actually a ghost. You know how some people light up a room when they walk in? I'm the opposite. I'm the woman who can stand in the corner of a party for 3 hours and leave without a single person realizing I was there. It wasn't always like this. Before David, before Tommy, I was different. I was an art teacher at the local high school. I had opinions, dreams, a voice that people actually listened to. I painted in my spare time these wild, colourful landscapes that felt like they were bursting with life. I was alive then, really alive. But somewhere between saying I do and becoming a stepmother to Lily, I started shrinking. It happened so gradually I didn't notice at first. A comment here, a dismissal there, until I was apologising for taking up space in my own home. David is what people call a good man. He works hard, he doesn't cheat, he pays the bills, he coaches Lily's soccer team and never misses her school plays. He's the kind of father that other dads aspire to be, just not to my son. When David and I met, Tommy was 2, a chubby-cheeked toddler who called every man dada, hopefully, waiting for one to stick around. David was charming then, patient with Tommy's constant chatter and sticky fingers. He said he wanted to be the father Tommy never had. But Lily was his real daughter, his flesh and blood, and no matter how much he claimed to love Tommy, when push came to shove, biology won every time. Like tonight at the circus. We'd been having such a good day too, one of those rare Saturdays where David wasn't at Lily's soccer game or piano recital, where his attention wasn't divided between his phone and his ex-wife Jessica's endless texts about their daughter's schedule. Tommy had been so excited. He'd been saving his allowance for weeks to buy circus peanuts and a light-up sword. His face glowed in the colourful lights of the big top as we found our seats. For once, it felt like we were a real family. David had his arm around me. Tommy was bouncing in his seat, pointing at everything. And even Lily seemed happy to be spending time with her little brother. I let myself relax. Let myself believe that maybe things were changing. The fire started during the finale. Some kind of electrical malfunction with the lights, they said later. 1 minute we were watching the trapeze artists, the next minute sparks were flying and the tent fabric was catching like it was doused in gasoline. The chaos was immediate. People were screaming, pushing, trying to get out through exits that suddenly seemed impossibly small. In the confusion, Tommy and I got separated from David and Lily. I saw them across the crowd, David holding Lily close, looking around frantically. I thought he was looking for us. I was wrong. David! I screamed over the noise, holding Tommy's hand tight. David, we're here! But he couldn't hear me. Or maybe he could, and he just wasn't listening. Because the next thing I knew, he was pushing through the crowd in the opposite direction, following Jessica, who was sobbing and pointing toward the section where some kids had been trapped when a burning beam fell. Tommy was pulling on my hand, scared and crying. Mommy, where's Daddy going? Why isn't he coming to get us? How do you explain to a 7-year-old that his stepfather's loyalty lies elsewhere? How do you tell your child that even in an emergency, he's not the priority? I picked Tommy up, my arms shaking with adrenaline and hurt. "It's okay, baby. Mummy's here. We're going to get out of here together." But it wasn't okay. None of this was okay. As we pushed toward the exit, I saw David emerge from the smoke carrying Lily. She was conscious, coughing but alive. Jessica was sobbing with relief, throwing her arms around both of them like they were her whole world returning to her. And maybe they were. Maybe that was the problem. David looked around then, finally, and his eyes found mine across the crowd. For a split second, I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt? Realization? Or maybe just the dawning awareness that he'd made a choice, and it wasn't us. Tommy was still in my arms, his face buried in my neck when David reached us. "Elena, thank God you're okay. I was so worried." "Were you?" The words came out sharper than I intended, because from where I was standing, it didn't look like you were worried about us at all. That's not fair. Lily was trapped. I had to. And what about Tommy? What about your son, who was crying for his daddy while you ran in the opposite direction? People were staring now. Other families who'd escaped the fire, paramedics, firefighters. This wasn't the place for this conversation, but I was past caring about appearances. "He's not my—" David started, then stopped himself. But the damage was done. The words hung in the smoky air between us like a death sentence. "He's not my son." After 8 years, that's what it came down to. Tommy wasn't his real son, so when crisis hit, instinct took over. Blood called to blood, and we were left behind. Tommy lifted his head from my shoulder then, and I saw that he'd heard. His little face was streaked with tears and soot, but his eyes were clear, too clear for a 7-year-old. He understood what David had almost said, what David really felt. "I want to go home, Mummy," Tommy whispered. "Just you and me." I looked at David, at Jessica fussing over Lily, at the family portrait that never included us, no matter how hard we tried to squeeze into the frame. And I felt something inside me crack wide open, not breaking, but opening, like a door I'd kept locked for years, finally swinging free. "Okay, baby," I said, my voice steady for the first time all night. "Let's go home." As we walked away from the circus, from the fire, from David's protest that we should talk about this, I realized something. The circus tent wasn't the only thing that had burned tonight. 8 years of trying to be enough, of watching my son try to be enough, had gone up in flames too. And maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe some things need to burn before they can grow back stronger. Tommy fell asleep in the car on the drive home, his small hand still clutching mine. In the rearview mirror, I could see the orange glow of the fire trucks, still working to put out the last of the flames. But I wasn't looking back anymore. For the first time in years, I was looking forward. The silence in our house that night was deafening. I tucked Tommy into bed, his small body still trembling from everything that had happened. He kept asking why Daddy didn't come for us first, and I ran out of gentle lies to tell him. What do you say to a child whose stepfather just showed him exactly where he stands in the family hierarchy? "Mommy," Tommy's voice was small in the darkness of his room. "Are we not Daddy's real family?" My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I sat on the edge of his bed, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "You are my real family, baby. You are my everything. But not Daddy's." I wanted to lie. God, how I wanted to lie and protect him from this truth that no 7-year-old should have to carry. But I'd been lying to both of us for too long already. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I know that you deserve someone who chooses you first, every single time." He nodded solemnly, like he understood more than any child should. "Like you do, Mummy." "Like I do." After he fell asleep, I found myself standing in our living room, really looking at it for the first time in years. Family photos lined the mantel, but they told a story I'd been too blind to see. David and Lily at her school play. David and Lily at the beach. David coaching Lily's soccer team. The few photos that included Tommy and me felt forced, like we were photobombing someone else's life. There was one photo that stopped me cold. Last Christmas morning. David is on the floor with Lily, helping her assemble some elaborate dollhouse he'd spent hours researching online. In the background, barely visible, Tommy sits alone with a book I'd given him, while I'm in the kitchen cleaning up wrapping paper. We were in the same room, but We might as well have been on different planets. How had I let this happen? How had I become so small in my own life? My phone buzzed. David, we need to talk. I'm staying at Mum's tonight to give you space, but we can't leave things like this. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. You already left things like this. 8 years ago. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. That's not fair, Eleanor. You know I love Tommy. Love. Such a funny word. David thought he loved Tommy the way someone loves their friend's kid with affection, but no real responsibility, no instinct to protect, no bone-deep need to put that child first no matter what. I didn't respond. The next morning, Tommy was quieter than usual. He picked at his cereal, drawing patterns in the milk with his spoon. Do you want to talk about yesterday? I asked gently. He shrugged, then looked up at me with those serious brown eyes that were too old for his face. Is Daddy coming home? I don't know, baby. Good, he said quietly, then immediately looked guilty for saying it. I mean, I don't want him to be sad, but maybe it would be better if it was just us again. Like before, when it was just Tommy and me against the world, when I was enough for someone and someone was enough for me. That afternoon, my best friend Maya showed up at my door with coffee and the kind of fierce expression that meant she was ready for war. Okay, spill. David called James this morning asking if he could stay in their guest room for a few days. What the hell happened? Maya has been my anchor since college. She's the one person who knew me before I became David's wife, before I started disappearing piece by piece. She's also the only person who's ever called me out on it. I told her everything. The fire, David's choice, Tommy's heartbreak, the photos on the mantle that told the real story of our family. Maya listened without interrupting, her jaw getting tighter with every detail. Eleanor, she said when I finished, I have been waiting 8 years for you to see what everyone else has been seeing. What do you mean? I mean that David treats you like a live-in babysitter who he occasionally sleeps with. I mean that you've been bending yourself into pretzel shapes trying to make room for his guilt over his failed relationship with Jessica, and you've lost yourself completely in the process. Her words hit like a slap because they were true. All of it. But he's a good man. Stop! Maya held up her hand. Stop making excuses for him. Good men don't make their stepsons feel like consolation prizes. Good men don't run past their families in emergencies. Good husbands don't make their wives invisible in their own homes. I started crying then. Not pretty tears, but ugly, soul-deep sobs that had been building for years. I don't know how to leave, I whispered. I don't know how to start over. I'm 34 years old, Maya. I haven't worked in 3 years. I don't even know who I am anymore without him. Maya moved to the couch and pulled me into a hug. You're Elena Richardson. You're an incredible mother. You're an artist who used to paint sunrises so beautiful they made people cry. You're the woman who drove 6 hours to be with me when my dad died. You're the person who sees the best in everyone, sometimes to your own detriment. You're not David's wife or Lily's stepmother or anyone's supporting character. You're the main character of your own story, and it's time you started acting like it. That evening, after Maya left and Tommy was in bed, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went up to the attic and found my art supplies. They were dusty, neglected, but still there, like some part of me had been waiting for this moment. I set up an easel in the kitchen and started painting. No plan, no vision, just colours flowing onto canvas. Reds and oranges and yellows, fire colours, but not destructive fire. Cleansing fire, phoenix fire. I was still painting when David came home around 10. Elena? His voice was tentative, careful. Can we talk now? I didn't stop painting. I'm listening. I know what it looked like yesterday, but you have to understand. Jessica was hysterical. Lily was in real danger. I had to make a split-second decision. You did make a decision. I added another stroke of orange to the canvas. You made the same decision you've been making for 8 years. That's not... David. I finally turned to look at him. When was the last time you and Tommy did something together? Just the two of you? He opened his mouth, then closed it, thinking, when was the last time you asked about his day at school? When was the last time you went to one of his Little League games? I go to his games. You go to Lily's games. Tommy's games happen to be at the same field sometimes. The silence stretched between us. In it, I could hear the truth he didn't want to admit. I do love him, he said finally. I believe you do, the way you love your neighbour's kid, or your friend's son. But David, he needed a father, not a kind stranger who pays his bills and occasionally notices he exists. What are you saying? I set down my paintbrush and really looked at my husband. He was still handsome, still the charming man I'd fallen in love with, but I was seeing him clearly for the first time in years, without the fog of desperation and hope clouding my vision. I'm saying that for 8 years, I've been trying to make us fit into a space that was never meant for us. I've been watching my son learn that love is conditional, that families have hierarchies, that some people matter more than others. Eleanor, please, we can work this out. I can do better. Can you? Can you really? Because yesterday, when it mattered most, your instincts kicked in. And we weren't your instinct, David. We never have been. He sat down heavily at the kitchen table, running his hands through his hair. So what? You want a divorce? You want to break up our family? Our family? I almost laughed, but there was no humour in it. David, we've never been your family. We've been your second family, your backup family, the family you settled for because you couldn't have the one you really wanted. That's not true, isn't it? When Jessica calls, you drop everything. When Lily needs something, you move mountains. When Tommy needs something. I gestured around the room, at the photos that told the real story, at the 8 years of evidence neither of us could deny. When Tommy needs something, I make it happen. I've been his only real parent since the day we got married. David's phone buzzed on the table. Without thinking, he reached for it. Then he caught himself, caught me watching him, and his hand froze halfway there. It's probably just work, he said, but we both knew it wasn't. It was Jessica or something about Lily, or some crisis in his real family that would take precedence over this conversation, over us, just like it always did. I smiled sadly and went back to my painting. Go ahead and answer it, David. We both know you want to. He didn't answer the phone, but he didn't need to. The fact that he wanted to, that his first instinct was to check it even in the middle of this conversation, said everything. I think you should stay at your mom's for a while, I said quietly. We both need time to think. Eleanor, please, just please. After he left, I painted until dawn, and for the first time in 8 years, I felt like I could breathe. The painting I'd finished at dawn looked like chaos at first glance. All those fire colours bleeding into each other, no clear shapes or boundaries. But when I stepped back and really looked at it, I saw something else. I saw a woman emerging from flames, not destroyed by them, but transformed. Tommy found me asleep at the kitchen table that morning, my head pillowed on my arms next to the canvas. Mommy, did you paint all night? I lifted my head, my neck stiff from the awkward angle. Tommy was studying my painting with the serious concentration he gave to everything that mattered to him. It's beautiful, he said softly. She looks strong. He saw her too. The woman in the flames. The woman I was becoming. Thank you, baby. Are you hungry? I can make pancakes. Can we have the Mickey Mouse ones? The ones Daddy says are too much trouble? Such a small request, but it hit me like a revelation. How many times had I said no to Tommy because David thought something was too much trouble, too messy, too inconvenient? How many little joys had I denied my son to keep peace in a marriage that was already broken? We can have any kind you want. Mickey Mouse, dinosaurs, hearts, whatever makes you happy. His face lit up like I'd offered him the world. Maybe I had. We spent the morning making elaborate pancake shapes and eating them with far too much syrup. Tommy told me about his dreams. He wanted to be a paleontologist. Did I know that? He'd been reading about dinosaurs for months, but somehow I'd missed it. David certainly had. Maybe we can go to the Natural History Museum next weekend, I suggested. Just You and me. Really? We don't have to wait for Daddy and Lily. The hope in his voice broke my heart. No, sweetheart, we don't have to wait for anyone. After breakfast, I called my old principal, Mrs. Henderson. My hands were shaking as I dialed. It had been 3 years since I'd taught. 3 years since I'd been Eleanor, the art teacher, instead of just Eleanor, David's wife. Eleanor, what a lovely surprise. How are you, dear? I'm ready to come back, I said. If there's a position available. There was a pause. Then, Mrs. Henderson's warm laugh. Funny you should call. Jenny Morrison just gave her notice. She's moving to Denver with her husband. I was dreading trying to find someone to take over her art classes mid-semester. When can you start? It felt like the universe was finally conspiring in my favour instead of against me. As soon as you need me. That afternoon, while Tommy played in the backyard, I started making practical plans. I called a lawyer Maya's recommendation, a woman who specialised in family law. I scheduled an appointment for the following week. I looked at apartments online, small 2-bedroom places that Tommy and I could make our own. David texted around noon. Can I take you and Tommy to dinner tonight? We need to talk as a family. As a family. The words that used to give me hope now just made me tired. Tommy has school tomorrow. Another time. An hour later. Eleanor, please. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. You didn't mess up, David. You showed me exactly who you are. I just finally decided to believe you. Maya came over that evening with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. Tommy was thrilled to have Aunt Maya for dinner. She was one of the few people in our lives who saw him, really saw him, the way she saw me. Tell me about your dinosaur book, kiddo, she said, settling next to him on the couch. Tommy's eyes lit up as he launched into an elaborate explanation of the difference between carnivores and herbivores. Maya listened like he was delivering a doctoral thesis, asking questions and making impressed noises at all the right moments. Watching them together, I realised something that should have been obvious years ago. The people who truly cared about me cared about Tommy too. They didn't see him as an obligation or a package deal. They saw him as part of me, part of what made me who I was. David had never understood that. To him, Tommy and I were separate entities that happened to live in his house. He could like Tommy without truly accepting him as his son. He could love me without truly seeing me as his priority. After Tommy went to bed, Maya and I sat on the porch with our wine, talking like we used to in college. I'm scared, I admitted. What if I can't do this alone? What if I'm making a huge mistake? Eleanor, you've been doing it alone for years. You've just been pretending you had help. She was right. Every parent-teacher conference I'd attended solo because David was at Lily's recital. Every fever I'd managed through the night while David slept peacefully beside me. Every scraped knee I'd kissed. Every homework battle I'd fought. Every bedtime story I'd read. I'd been a single mother with a roommate who occasionally helped with bills. You know what the really messed up part is? I said. I think I convinced myself that being chosen second was better than not being chosen at all. Like I should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention he threw our way. That's not love, honey. That's not even close to love. I know that now. Maya reached over and squeezed my hand. You're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to be yourself again. The next few days passed in a blur of planning and paperwork. I met with the lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia who didn't sugarcoat anything. You're in a strong position, she told me. You've been Tommy's primary caregiver, you have a job lined up, and, frankly, your husband's behaviour at the fire won't look good to a judge if custody becomes an issue. Custody. Such a clinical word for something so devastating. David wasn't Tommy's biological father, but he'd been in his life for 8 years. He was the only father Tommy remembered. I don't want to hurt Tommy, I said. He loves David despite everything, and that speaks well of both you and your son. But, Eleanor, you can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, and you certainly can't let your child learn that love means accepting less than you deserve. That evening, David showed up at the house. I saw him through the kitchen window, sitting in his car in the driveway for almost 10 minutes before finally getting out. Eleanor, Can we talk? I let him in, but we stayed in the living room, neutral territory, with Tommy safely upstairs doing homework. I've been thinking about what you said, he started, about Tommy and me, about priorities. I waited. For 8 years, I'd rushed to fill David's silences, to make things easier for him, to smooth over the rough edges of conversations he didn't want to have. Not anymore. I know I haven't been the father he deserved. I know I haven't been the husband you deserved. But I want to try. I want to do better. David, this isn't about trying harder. This is about who you are when no one's watching. This is about instinct, about what your heart tells you to do when everything's on the line. People can change, can they? Because yesterday, Jessica texted you 17 times about Lily's science project. I counted, and you answered every single one while you were supposedly thinking about how to save our marriage. His face flushed. She needed help. She needed help finding poster board, David. Poster board. And you dropped everything to drive across town and buy it for her because God forbid Lily have to make do with regular cardboard like every other kid in her class. You're being unfair. Am I? When was the last time you drove across town for Tommy? When was the last time you put his needs before Lily's convenience? The silence stretched between us, heavy with 8 years of accumulated resentment and disappointment. I love him, David said finally. I love both of you. I believe you love us the way you're capable of loving us. But it's not enough, David. It's not the kind of love that builds a family. It's not the kind of love Tommy needs from a father. So what? You're just giving up. You're not even willing to try couples therapy or... I've been trying for 8 years. I've been bending and compromising and making excuses until I don't even recognize myself anymore. I've watched my son learn that he's not worth fighting for, that he should be grateful for whatever attention he gets. I stood up, needing space, needing air. Do you know what Tommy asked me this morning? He asked if we could go to the museum, just the two of us, because he's tired of waiting for you to have time for him. He's 7 years old, David. 7. And he's already learned not to expect too much from the man who's supposed to be his father. David's shoulders sagged. For a moment, he looked older, tired in a way that went bone deep. What do you want me to do? He asked quietly. I want you to let us go. I want you to stop pretending we're your family when we're really just your obligation. I want you to be honest about what you want instead of trying to want what you think you should want. And what about Lily? She loves you and Tommy. Lily will be fine. She has 2 parents who put her first, who make her the centre of their universe. She's never had to wonder where she stands or compete for attention. She's never had to be grateful for leftovers. I walked to the mantel and picked up that Christmas photo, the one that had shown me the truth about our family. Look at this picture, David. Really, look at it. What do you see? He took the frame, studied it. I watched his face change as he saw what I'd seen, the story it told, the hierarchy it revealed, the distance between us even when we were in the same room. I see. He stopped, started again. I see a family. You see your family. Lily opening gifts while you help her. And in the background, you see the people who live in your house. He set the photo down carefully, like it might break. Maybe it already had. Elena, I never meant... I know you didn't. That's what makes this so hard. You're not a villain, David. You're just a man who was trying to love 2 families at once, and you could only ever fully commit to one of them. Tommy's footsteps on the stairs interrupted us. He appeared in the doorway, pyjama-clad and hesitant. Mommy, I finished my homework. Can you read to me? Of course, baby. Give me just a minute. Tommy looked at David, then back at me. Is Daddy staying for stories tonight? The question hung in the air like a challenge. David looked at me, then at Tommy, and I saw something shift in his face. A recognition, maybe. An understanding of what he was losing, what he'd already lost. Not tonight, buddy, David said softly, but maybe we can have our own story time soon. Just you and me. Tommy nodded solemnly, like he understood that this was David's way of saying goodbye to the pretense that we'd all been living. After Tommy went upstairs, David and I stood in the living room that had never really felt like home to any of us. "I'll find somewhere else to stay," he said. "Give you time to figure things out." "Thank you." He headed toward the door, then stopped. "Eleanor, for what it's worth, I really did try to love him like my own. I know. But trying isn't the same as doing, and Tommy deserves better than good intentions." After he left, I went upstairs and read to Tommy until he fell asleep. Then I sat in the dark of his room, listening to his quiet breathing, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. For the first time in 8 years, I felt peace. 6 months later, I was standing in my new classroom, hanging student artwork on bulletin boards that actually belonged to me, when I heard a familiar voice in the hallway. "Mrs. Richardson! Mrs. Richardson! Is that really you?" I turned to see Ashley Chen, one of my former students, now a senior. Her face was glowing with excitement, and she was practically bouncing on her toes. "Ashley, look at you, all grown up. I can't believe you're back. I've been telling everyone about your painting class. Remember that landscape project where you taught us about light and shadow? I'm majoring in art now because of you. That's the thing about teaching. You plant seeds without knowing which ones will grow. For 3 years, I'd forgotten that I was more than just someone's wife, someone's stepmother. I was Eleanor Richardson, the teacher who saw potential in shy kids and helped them find their voices through art. That's wonderful, Ashley. I'm so proud of you. Are you doing the after-school art club again? Please say yes. My little sister Emily is in 8th grade now, and she's obsessed with drawing. She needs someone like you. As if summoned by magic, a gangly 8th grader appeared next to Ashley, clutching a sketchbook to her chest like a shield. "Emily, this is Mrs. Richardson, the teacher I told you about." Emily looked up at me with those intense eyes that all serious young artists have, the ones that see too much and feel everything deeply. "Ashley says you're the best art teacher in the world," Emily said shyly. "She says you helped her believe in herself." Standing there, looking at these two girls who saw me as someone important, someone worth seeking out, I felt a shift inside my chest, like pieces of myself clicking back into place after years of being scattered. "Well," I said, smiling, "I think we definitely need to bring back that art club." That evening, Tommy and I were making dinner in our tiny apartment kitchen when he asked the question I'd been dreading. "Mum, do you think Daddy misses us?" We'd been in our new place for 2 months now. It was small, a 2-bedroom apartment with thin walls and a view of the parking lot, but it was ours. Tommy had his own room painted the exact shade of blue he wanted, with glow-in-the-dark dinosaur stickers on the ceiling that we'd put up together one rainy Saturday. "I think he misses the idea of us," I said carefully, stirring the pasta sauce. "Sometimes people miss what they think they want more than what they actually had. That's confusing." "Yeah, it is. Adult feelings are often confusing, even to adults." Tommy considered this while setting the table, a skill he'd mastered since we moved out, along with doing his own laundry and making his own breakfast. Not because I made him, but because he wanted to help, wanted to be part of our team of 2. "I don't miss him," Tommy said quietly, then immediately looked guilty. "Is that bad?" I knelt down to his level, taking his small hands in mine. "Baby, it's not bad to feel relieved when something that was hurting you stops hurting. You don't have to feel guilty for being happy. I like it when it's just us. Is that selfish?" "Not selfish, honest, and I like it too." It was true. These past 6 months had been hard, financially scary, emotionally exhausting, sometimes lonely, but they'd also been peaceful in a way I'd forgotten was possible. No more walking on eggshells, no more competing for attention, no more watching my son try to earn love that should have been freely given. Our life was smaller now, but it was wholly ours. The divorce papers had been finalised last month. David hadn't fought me on custody, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of relief. He had visitation rights with Tommy every other weekend, but he'd only exercised them twice. Both times Tommy had come home quiet and subdued. Not sad exactly, but not happy either. "It's like he's trying really hard to be my dad for 2 days," Tommy had explained after the second visit, "but it feels fake, like he's acting in a play about being a dad instead of just being one." Kids see truth in ways adults spend years learning to avoid. 3 weeks later, I was grading papers in my classroom after school when someone knocked on my door. I looked up to see a man I didn't recognise. Tall, kind eyes, holding a cup of coffee and looking slightly nervous. "Mrs. Richardson, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm Jake Martinez, Emily Chen's father. I was hoping I could talk to you for a minute." Emily's father. I'd heard about him from her, recently divorced, raising Emily and her younger brother on his own while working as a paediatric nurse at the hospital. "Of course, come in. Is everything okay with Emily?" "Actually, everything's great with Emily. Better than it's been in a long time." He stepped into the classroom, glancing around at the student artwork covering every surface. "She talks about your art club constantly, about how you encourage her to take risks with her drawing, how you really listen to her ideas. She's incredibly talented, and she has such a unique perspective. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about." Jake sat down in the chair across from my desk. Emily's been through a rough couple of years with a divorce, and she'd kind of shut down creatively. She used to draw all the time, but then she just stopped until your class. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. Emily's latest sketch, a detailed drawing of a phoenix rising from ashes. She said you taught them about phoenix mythology, about how sometimes things have to burn down before they can become beautiful. I stared at the drawing, feeling tears prick my eyes. It was stunning, but more than that, it was hopeful. This girl who'd been through her own fire had found a way to see beauty in the burning. "She's remarkable," I managed. "She is, and so are you, from what I can tell." Jake's cheeks reddened slightly. "I know this is probably inappropriate, and please tell me if I'm overstepping, but I wondered if you'd like to get coffee sometime. Not as Emily's teacher, just as adults who've both been through difficult transitions and come out the other side." I looked at this man, really looked at him. He was handsome in a gentle way, but more than that, he was present. When he talked about his daughter, his whole face lit up. When he looked at me, I felt seen in a way I'd almost forgotten was possible. "I'd like that," I said. "I'd like that very much." Our first coffee date turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a long walk around the park near the hospital where he worked. We talked about everything: our kids, our art, our fears about starting over in our 30s, our dreams for the futures we were building. "You know what's funny?" Jake said as we sat on a bench watching the sunset. "Emily told me I should ask you out weeks ago. She said any adult who could make teenagers excited about art history was probably worth getting to know. Smart kid. She gets that from her mother. The wisdom, I mean. I just provide the terrible dad jokes and the ability to make really good pancakes. Tommy loves pancakes, especially Mickey Mouse-shaped ones. Emily's partial to dinosaur pancakes, something about accuracy in scientific representation." We laughed, and I realised it had been years since I'd felt this light, this hopeful about the possibility of letting someone into our carefully constructed life. "Jake," I said carefully, "I need you to know that Tommy and we come as a package deal. He's been through a lot, and I'm very protective of him. I would expect nothing less. And Eleanor, I need you to know that Emily and Carlos come as a package deal too. I'm not looking for someone to be their mother. They have a mother who loves them. But I am looking for someone who understands that being a parent is the most important thing I do. The most important thing. Not one of many priorities, not something to be balanced against other relationships or obligations. The most important thing." That night, I called Maya to tell her about Jake. "So, let me get this straight," she said, and I could hear the grin in her voice. "He's a paediatric nurse. He's raising 2 kids on his own. He thinks Emily's art is the most fascinating thing in the world, and he asked you out because his daughter told him to." That's the summary, yes. "Eleanor, I think the universe is trying to tell you something." 6 months into dating Jake, Tommy asked if Jake could come to his little league game. "Are you sure, baby? It's okay if you want it to be just us." "I want him to come, and Emily and Carlos too. They feel like family, like the kind of family where everyone actually wants to be there." That Saturday, sitting in the bleachers with Jake, Emily, and 9-year-old Carlos, watching Tommy pitch his little heart out, I felt something I'd never experienced before. I felt like I belonged exactly where I was, with exactly the people I was with. Tommy struck out the last batter and turned to the stands with his arms raised in victory. But he wasn't looking for David's approval or hoping someone might notice him. He was looking directly at us. His chosen family, his real family, and his smile could have powered the entire stadium. After the game, as we walked to the parking lot with Tommy proudly carrying his trophy, Jake took my hand. "Eleanor," he said quietly, "I think I'm falling in love with you. With both of you." I stopped walking, turned to face him fully. Emily and Carlos were a few steps ahead, arguing about whether we should get ice cream or pizza to celebrate. Tommy was between them, mediating with the serious diplomacy of a child who'd learned to navigate complicated family dynamics. "I think I'm falling in love with you too," I said, "with all three of you. So, what do we do now?" I looked at our kids, his and mine, but somehow becoming ours, and felt that familiar stirring of possibility, of hope, of a future being born from the ashes of everything that came before. Now we see what we can build together. Something real this time. Something where everyone gets chosen first. That night, after Tommy was asleep, I stood in front of my easel working on a new painting. Not fire this time, but sunrise all golds and pinks, and the kind of light that promises new beginnings. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is watching your old life burn down, because in the ashes, if you're brave enough to look, you might find the seeds of something beautiful, something true, something worth fighting for. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you find people who will fight for it with you.